Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. We've got something a little different for you today about an Aussie business that's doing things, well, a little differently. Swimwear company Budgy Smuggler started as a joke back in 2005 and has now grown into an iconic brand around the nation and increasingly around the world. The skimpy swimmers have built a cult following amongst everyone from larrikins to families and especially elite athletes. The motley crew behind Budgy Smuggler have shunned the typical business formalities in a whole variety of ways. Their job titles, their marketing strategy, and the way they interact with their community. Adam Linforth is the chief smuggler. Yes, that's really what it says on the business card, the chief smuggler at Budgy Smuggler. Adam, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean. It's great to be with you this morning.
What's it like being a chief smuggler?
I don't know. This is just kind of a hobby that's got a little bit out of hand. I mean, for the first 8 or 9 years, Budgy Smuggler was just a hobby and a loss-making venture. And then, I don't know, a few years ago, things started to turn and momentum picked up. And now, it's a full-time job selling sort of fluorescent lycra to people around the world.
Now, for those who don't know, Budgy Smugglers, it's fair to say they're like if you ever see the swimmers, the male swimmers in the Olympics, they're all wearing those very brief Speedos, I would have grown up calling them. That's effectively what Budgy Smugglers are. So who had the original idea to make something of it?
Yeah, so there was a bloke called Lockie Harris who was the original sort of main driving force, and it was just some blokes in a backyard getting pissed thinking it was funny to write Budgy Smuggler on the back of a pair. It was just done on a pair of actual Speedos. And then
it was funny, though. It was funny.
It was. Got the trademark, and then Lockie got a proper job. He became the press secretary for the Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, at the time. And I kind of took the reins from there in 2008. And then, it's just been a gradual kind of ascent. Like every year since then, we've grown between 30 and 80%. But we've never had like a Justin Bieber moment or a Kardashian moment when the light bulb goes off all around the world and we do 3 or 5 times in a year. It just sort of steadily gathered pace.
Okay, so a few things there. Budgy, you know you're not supposed to spell it with a Y. It's an IE, but you spell it with a Y.
Yeah, so the original pairs were made, like you had to print the label with like a plastisol print. Like if anyone's ever ironed on a number on a kid's sports jersey, that's how they were done. And making the plates for them were quite expensive. And then you would have to buy like 1,000 at a time. And so when we made them, we spelt it incorrectly with a Y and we just sort of found it funny. So it was too late to change back. We were committed. So
what genius. We
tell people that it has to do with trademark law and they wouldn't understand. But it was just a flat out balls up.
So far, I like the strategic planning that went into this from day one. It's clearly there. You know, yourself and Lachlan Harris and other people involved, you obviously don't mind breaking rules and just doing things as they turn up.
Yeah, well, I think at the start we had an issue, and that was that no one was wearing Budgy Smugglers or Speedo style swimwear, and we were a company called Budgy Smuggler who only made Budgy Smuggler style swimwear. So we had to sort of think, how are we going to connect or get the average Australian bloke on board? And the typical kind of advertising for people in Speedo style swimwear at that time, there was sort of Aussie bum was quite big, and it was kind of eroticized bloke, oiled up with a 6-pack. And we didn't think that would connect, I guess. So we
didn't connect with me. With me.
No, nor me. And so we went about it a different way. The original plan was just for blokes to get in them and get loose. So we'd set like 20 blokes in Cargo Bar on Ladies' Day, just roaming around in smugglers. But that wasn't entirely sustainable. And it kind of shifted from there to, just people going around the world, taking photos in them. And sort of ironically, like we built a swimwear brand out of non-water sports. So we're probably much bigger in rugby league, rugby union, Aussie rules, cricket, than we are in just plain ocean swimming.
Okay, so that use of influencers, well, it's not even influencers originally. It was just sort of, turning up at bars with not many clothes on. But you've really pushed through sort of influencer marketing. You've had some pretty big names wearing your swimmers.
Yeah, so I think at the start, the obvious thing if you're building a brand in Australia is around, very sports-focused culture. How do you get some of those big names wearing your product? And I remember a story right at the beginning. We got a call from the manager of Berwick Barnes, who was a Wallaby player from Queensland. And he's like, Berwick loves smugglers, can we do something? So I went to meet with his manager and we sort of sat down and we started talking, and he realised, I think, how small Budgy was at the time. I think he might have even asked us how much we were turning over, and I was like, 40 grand or something. And he was like, oh, okay, mate, don't worry about a deal. He's like, just so you know, things can be done from like sort of 10 grand each. And I thought about it and I'm like, we're going to have to pay 10 grand or more per athlete to wear our stuff. Like, that's not ever going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
So we had to think about it another way, which was like, how do we build something that the players actually want to wear and they're genuinely going to embrace? Because we didn't have a checkbook that we could gain that kind of endorsements, I guess. So, yeah, we went around building something that the players just found funny and that was a good product that they enjoyed to wear. We make it all in Australia, which I think is a part of that. But in terms of how long it took to then, watching the NRL and seeing like half the players wearing Smugglers, that took like 5 years. So It's definitely not if you're in a race, I'd probably go at it a different way. But over the long term, it's been to our benefit, because when people have seen people wearing Budgy Smuggler, it's been genuine. The players have often bought them themselves. So I find the influencer thing a bit kind of cringe. It's something that we've shunned away from. But over the long term, we've been very fortunate that a lot of the boys and now the girls have got around us.
Tony Abbott, right? Whenever you think of Budgy Smugglers, Tony Abbott often comes to mind. And as much as you might laugh at him wearing very brief costumes in front of the cameras, he at least had the body to match. That sort of thing, I'm not sure that he was wearing your product or not. But that sort of, and those images of him and that, it can't hurt your product.
No, I think it probably fits in any publicity is good publicity. But we tried to sort of focus around, any shape and size wearing our kit.
Yep.
So one of the strategies for that, I guess, was in 2016, we held a contest for the search for Australia's most ordinary rig, which was like a Miss World meets Victoria's Secret style pageant. And we actually flew the top 10 ordinary rigs from around Australia into a contest. And the winner of that won a billboard in their hometown saying, welcome to, it was Mount Isa where he was from, home of Australia's most ordinary rig.
What's an ordinary rig?
An ordinary rig, like you should look like, I think the criteria was, you should look like you were capable of playing sport at a reasonable level at some point in your life,
right,
but were prevented, from injury, poor coaching selection at a young age, which, derailed you.
Absolutely.
It's not a sloppy rig.
Know the story. That's right.
It's not a sloppy rig competition.
Yeah.
So you should still be capable to swing an axe and run for a taxi.
Right. Okay. And it worked, obviously.
Yeah, I think that got us a lot of cut through. And again, we had to, the first thing people would say at the start was, I could never wear Budgy Smugglers. I don't have the physique for it. So trying to redefine in people's minds who can wear it. Only a few % of blokes have got decent rigs, and I'm not really one of them either. So it's just making it acceptable for myself partly.
I love the story. It was the Malaysian F1 Grand Prix in 2016 and 9 Australians were arrested. They stripped down to a pair of Malaysian flag swimmers.
Yeah.
Was that good or bad for business?
It was stressful at the time, but our brand recognition kind of went through the roof and it sort of went global around the world, that story. We even got a massive surge in traffic of people wanting to buy those pairs from Malaysia. But the boys spent a couple of nights in Malaysian jail cell.
Yeah, not so good.
So it probably wouldn't be advised, but in the long run, I think it's ended up okay for most of them and for us as well. But yeah, it's a high risk strategy.
Stay with me, Adam. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Adam Linforth, Chief Smuggler at Budgy Smuggler. Another thing that you do, and I think this is really, really impressive, particularly for a small business, You ran a charity event called Strut the Streets, and it was about raising money for Australian Indigenous mentoring experience.
Yep.
You commissioned Indigenous artists to design swimmers. You've partnered with charities like Movember and Are You OK? That whole altruism part of your business, why does that play such a big part of Budgy Smuggler?
Well, I think, again, like I'm really just doing this for a laugh. So there isn't really much hard business sense guiding it. So these are all important causes to me and to our community. I grew up and spent most of my 20s with Aboriginal people. They've been a huge influence on my life. So I was very keen to, or am very keen to, do what I can. In terms of profiling Indigenous artists, like they're also just some of the best artists that exist in Australia and the world. So that benefits us as well, that those artists do well. And they all earn a royalty on the pair. And then youth mental health is probably the other key focus for me and our team. It seems to touch us all. Mm-hmm. So we're just kind of going with where our interests are. And Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australia and youth mental health intersect with our interests, I guess.
Adam, as Chief Smuggler, this is your full-time job now, though, isn't it?
Yeah, so for the first 8 years I was on board, I had another job.
Right.
And then I made the switch to full-time smuggling about 5 years ago. And then we got a team of 14 or 15 here in Australia, about 20 in our factories in Australia, and then another few in the UK.
Okay, and you manufacture everything in Australia?
Yeah, so everything's made in Australia. Again, this is just it's fun making things. I don't really understand why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And early on, it was a bit more challenging probably than it is now, because the Australian dollar then was worth more than the US dollar, and it was costing us 3 or 4 times as much to make in Australia compared to, say, China or wherever else we might have got it made.
Yep.
But now it's more like 50%, 60% more expensive to manufacture in Australia through, changing the dollar, Asia becoming more expensive, and then also advanced manufacturing. So some of the jobs where we needed 3 people, one person's doing triple the work. So when you consider it's only 50%, say, in our industry, more expensive to make it, 1/3 of goods that are mass produced end up in landfill. About another third end up on sale. So we only make what we need. So that's better for the environment, but then also it's better cost-wise as well, because we don't have to chuck out all this stock and we don't have to put it on sale. So I suspect you'll see a bit of a shift back to more industries manufacturing in Australia, because whether you've got a machine sitting in wherever overseas or in Sydney, it doesn't actually cost that much different to operate.
Particularly in COVID times where the supply chains are such issues internationally.
Yeah.
So you can do it locally.
Absolutely. And I think with Budgy Smuggler, we want, when you put on a pair of smugglers, to feel like you're literally putting on a piece of Australia. That's the mindset we want. We want people to be really proud to put it on. And I don't think you get that sometimes when it's made overseas. So I think people feel that feeling when you put on a Budgy Smuggler pair is really important to me and to us. And so, that's why we'll keep all our swimwear made here. We're actually just bringing out some Australian merino wool socks that are made here. And I was looking into it. We make 80% of the world's fine merino wool, but we make almost no clothing from it.
Wow. Wow.
How is that situation? We've got almost got a monopoly on the market, yet we make nothing from it. It's we've lost the plot a little bit. If you've got a mill, it's not someone sitting there knitting each piece of wool. It's just machinery.
Yeah.
So we want to hopefully turn that tide a little bit. We're not going to be the world's factory, but if we're making high quality goods, then we can do it here in Australia, and I'm very keen and very bullish on it.
Fantastic. So what next? You've got 2 stores in Sydney, you've got a big online presence, and you've expanded into the UK. Where will Budgy Smuggler be in 5 years?
Good question. Well, I don't know. Is replacing the word Speedo in the English language too high a place?
No, that's aspirational. I think it's fantastic.
That's it. We did actually make the Oxford Dictionary in 2016. alongside the words glamping and wedding tackle. So
I do remember it was an American talk show, and I've been trying to remember the whole time, and it was someone like Jeffrey Rush or Russell Crowe or one of those hugely famous Australians talking about budgie smugglers on the talk show. I don't know whether you can remember this, and the host saying, "What are you talking about?" And I mean, it was Jeffrey Rush did wedding tackle, I think, but there was a budgie smuggler incident. I just can't remember which one it was, though.
I'm not sure, but that's actually a question we get a bit. Like, we're in the UK, why not the US? And a reason for that is it doesn't translate quite as well. They're like, what's a budgie? Like, oh, it's a small bird. Like, you're hiding a small bird. And they're like, why would you choose a small bird? It's like, but no, the immediate plans, we're focused on the UK. UK is a great place to grow a business if you're an Australian. I think, like, the culturally quite similar. Yeah. It's a good size place as well. Like, I spent 4 years in London. You can get around pretty easy.
Yeah.
So we're focused there. Probably France will be the next one for us. Like, Budgy Smuggler's got quite a big rugby following. And France, I think, has the most rugby players in the world. So over the next 5 years, they'll probably be our focus. And then hopefully we'll then probably cast our eyes to the US. It's just such a big place. We won't rush into it, but we'll start chipping away over there. There's actually a few kind of competitor brands that have popped up doing similar things, which really helps us, like in terms of educating the public that this isn't a kind of niche thing for oiled up Giorgio Armani looking kind of people, that the everyday man can free their thighs and smuggle with us.
I shall no longer use the term Speedo. From now, it's Budgy Smugglers here at Fear and Greed. Thank you for talking to us, Adam.
Thank you. Cheers, Sean.
That was Adam Linforth, Chief Smuggler at Budgy Smuggler. This is a Fear and Greed daily interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.